Hey, welcome back to Next Third, Best Third. I'm David Fenwick, your founder and your host, and we're so excited to have you here. And I'm super excited to introduce my new friend, Lamar Romero. Lamar, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here, David.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this is going to be so cool. There's so much we could do on this. But, one of the things about Next Third, Best Third is we're really trying to have guys examine their lives and take honest appraisal and then live with intentionality to make the changes they need to make, right? And one of the big areas where I see, because I talk to so many guys, where I see men struggling is in their relationships, especially with their significant other, as they go through life, the different phases of life. So, you have these guys that get married and everything's great, and then all of a sudden you have babies, and things change.
Wow.
Then those babies become kids and you're driving them around to soccer and things like this. And then the day comes where you get the empty nest, right? And being able to not just maintain, but actually nurture relationship with your wife or your significant other is so critical at that point. And sadly, the statistics show that empty nest divorces are on the rise, and it's so sad. They've invested 20, 25, 30 years together, and they find that they don't even know their partner. They don't know how to communicate. So
it's crazy.
You've got an interesting story, because not only are you married with 2 kids, but you and your wife run a business together.
That's right.
There's a lot of guys who are going to listen to this say, there's no way, no way I'm going to do that. So why don't you dig into it a little bit? Tell us a little bit about you, and then just go in and just run with this.
Okay, sure. So my name is Lamar Romero. I am the CEO and co-founder of a company called Higher Dragons. We do tastings for the beer, wine, and liquor industry. But I met my wife when I was 27 years old, and she was 23. And I'm 49 now, so you can do the math. It has been a really interesting journey. I grew up with really great role models for parents. I grew up watching my parents play and tickle each other. I have a great memory of one day them escalating and my dad crawling through a bathroom window, and he's as big as I am, with a hose and just drenching my mom with a water hose inside the house. So I had these really great role models of people that really loved each other and cared for each other and were passionate about it, right?
Yeah.
Very much in a physical sense, kissing, holding hands, that kind of thing. And that was kind of the model I wanted for my relationship with whomever I was going to end up with. And so for Laura and I, that didn't start that way, but it grew that way, right? For her and I she met me when I was working a real job at Dell Computer Corporation, as it was called at the time. And for her to transition with me to this kind of entrepreneurial world where you take a step back in your pay and things are very uncertain, and to do that journey with me has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And the skill sets that she brings, we are yin and yang on a lot of skill sets, right? I am a business guy, a math guy, and she is a creator and an artist, and just can come up with these amazing concepts. Did the logo for our company, did the website for our company, and all the marketing messages that go up for our company. So we are a really good 1-2 punch in that way. But to be able to do that requires a lot of great communication.
Right.
And it requires a lot of expectations being set and trust being built and following through on your word and your obligations.
Yeah, I would imagine that communicating as co-founders of a business, working together, and then also having the communicate as husband and wife,
right,
and as father and mother.
Yes,
those things can get blurred and crossed. I know I was talking to one of my daughters the other day, and I had my own business. I was a pastor and I was a dad, right? And she and I had this great conversation. Just reflecting on the past. And she said, Dad, there was times where I didn't know the man I was dealing with, right?
Wow.
She said, isn't that great that we could have that conversation?
Yeah, that is great.
But she'd say, sometimes I needed a dad, and you were my boss because she worked in my business. And then she says, and there was always that potential that you were my pastor, you know? So I would imagine maybe dig into that because that has to be a challenge for you guys, or maybe not.
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a challenge. It just became a way of life.
Yeah.
To juggle between the work life and the personal life. I mean, when we started dating, we were kids. That's what I like to say. I mean, I was 27, she's 23. Alcohol and partying was a big part of our life,
Sure.
right? So we would go out and have a lot of fun and make good money. So there's a lot of restaurants and bar nights, and we didn't have any kids and not very many obligations. And then as time went on, we actually ran into a problem with that. So it's really crazy that I'm going to fast forward and say now we're in this business and liquor business, but we ran into a problem with that. My wife had some issues that she hadn't really dealt with from previous relationships, from growing up. And so sometimes when we had the alcohol together, her and I would get very abrasive. And we almost broke up several times. And then one time I just put it to her and I said, and when we talk about conflict, and I know this is going to be a big part of what we talk about, I said, look, I don't want to continue this way. I don't want to have all these fights all the time, this lifestyle. This is horrible. Like, I need a break. I need you to go figure it out. We need to figure it out. And she said, you know what? I'm going to do AA. And I was like, no, you're not. That's really sweet of you to say that, but you're not. She did it for a year.
Really?
She did it for a year. She put some solid effort into figuring out why the alcohol was triggering her the way it was. And she was really afraid to drink. But she's the only person I know with this kind of the mind. And I know this is against conventional thinking, but she overcame the demons and was able to insert alcohol in her life again where she could have it. And she wasn't having the episodes that she was having before.
Sure. I would imagine, there's those people who go through AA and they've got chemical problems in their bodies and everything. And then there's others that alcohol is really medicating pain, medicating wounds that come up, right?
It is. I don't think that AA currently can differentiate between the two. So AA cautiously and intelligently teaches you, that's it, you're done for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
There are those few that can escape that if they can cope and deal with whatever those demons are.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody else besides Laura, though, that's been able to do it that way. Because now, fast forward, we're in a liquor business together. I mean, heck, last night we went to a wedding. We were drinking. We had a great time. But she's got a really strong mind. And she made the ultimate effort to say this relationship was more important than anything that we were doing at the time. When that kind of respect is built up at the very beginning, you've got one or two choices, man. Like for me, I was like, I cannot believe this person is doing so much to fix this, to sacrifice, and I would go to the AA things with her, and AA was a real drag because she would see what happened if you hit rock bottom. There's people in there that, are really dealing with some real struggles.
Sure.
And she's like, wow, I don't want to get there. Right. But she really dealt with those issues. And from that came this point where her and I could have much more honest discussions about things. Fast forward a few years later, while I was building Higher Dragons, Laura would be in and out of the business. And one of the things she did, she went and worked for a tequila company. And she became the breadwinner for a while. And it was awesome. She was getting paid really great. And she was repping a tequila. But now she was traveling all the time. And I missed her.
Sure.
I didn't realize how important it was for me. Some men can travel or women can travel. But for me, it was important to have that interaction with my wife a lot.
How much of that, you told the story of your mom and dad, right? So seeing your mom and dad have that intimacy and that playfulness and everything, and that was a goal of yours, I imagine that seriously was affecting you while she was gone.
Yeah, because she's my best friend.
Yeah.
And we do everything, we do so much together. It's crazy. We have our own separate lives and our own separate interests. And for instance, I like to play computer games and she likes to play guitar. But we do and interact so well together. And so, when I grew up very conservatively, my mom was a housemaker, right? So she was always there at the house.
Sure.
And my dad worked the long hours at a chemical engineering plant. And so, but they always made time for each other on the weekends and did things together. So, one day I just approached Laura and I said, you're not going to like this, but I've been going out with a certain set of friends. One thing I should add is I grew up a country western dance instructor. So one of the things I do is I go out to bars and country dance. I met Laura country dancing. And I said, I'm going out with my friends and country dancing. And my eyes wavering, like I'm connecting with some people and I'm letting you know because I don't want that to be. Right. So I had to have the courage to come to her and say, look, I'm having a chance to be unfaithful here.
Yeah.
And I'm letting you know that.
That is such an important thing. We talk a lot here about masculinity and what it really is. Here you're this big, strong guy, know this.
Sure.
And that's not really masculinity. Masculinity is being vulnerable, being honest, doing the hard things.
I think being honest is just being honest. Like, I don't know what's happened in this world, but just be honest.
Yeah. But a lot of guys have trouble. I'm just being real.
A lot of guys and gals. I mean, people have trouble being honest with themselves and honest with others.
Right.
And one of the terms that I use in my household a lot is brutal honesty.
Brutal honesty.
It's like, hey, if Laura and I had an argument, I'm like, nope, that's not what you really feel. Tell me what you really feel.
Yeah.
Give it to me. I can take it.
We call that brave communication.
Brave communication. I like that terminology. That's what I was doing with her at that time. And at first she was very angry. She was, just that initial moment was anger. Like, I can't believe you would even contemplate. And she took a step back. A few hours later, or maybe it was a day later, I don't know, this was a long time ago. She was like, you know what? Thank you for telling me that. I'm going to go talk to my job and see if I can travel less. And she did. And she traveled a lot less. They gave her a smaller territory. She wasn't covering the whole state of Texas anymore. And that's just one example, I think, of many of where if you can have good, open, honest conversations and both parties be after the same goal, which is how do we come to a conclusion, a resolution, a compromise? Not I'm going to extract as much as I can get out of this. Then you will see your relationship continue to bud in ways that you didn't initially realize.
You and I, before the podcast, we're talking about conflict, right? And how conflict is absolutely necessary in relationships. And we try to avoid conflict, but a healthy relationship needs conflict. But what I'm hearing from you right now that is really kind of eye-opening to me is to approach the conflict as not being adversarial, but being on the same side of it, saying, this is our goal.
That's right. How
are we going to get there together through this situation?
That's right. That's exactly it. And I don't know if it's been a factor of our life, but Laura and I grow together on things. We grow in parallel. When she wanted kids, I wanted kids, right? Like, because we did it late in life. Yeah. I was my oldest is 8, so I had my oldest when I was 41. But those conversations, you got to create that conflict. You got to create those situations where you're being honest, so that you can make sure that the expectations are being met correctly. Mm-hmm. And then maybe your expectations are out of whack, and you've got to be honest enough with yourself to realize that, okay, what I'm expecting here is it's just ridiculous, and I need to compromise on this, right? It could be how many times you're having sex in a week, whatever it is, but it's like, what is the right compromise that still makes me happy and makes my partner happy on whatever issue it is that we're talking about, so that we can move forward together.
Mm-hmm. That is so good. That is so good. You were telling me about your business, and we don't have to go into the particulars, but the highs and lows. Let's just call the highs and lows of your business, right? Um, because I've owned my own business too. When your business is taking an economic downturn, right? How do you guys kind of communicate through that? Because I'm sure it would be easy to medicate that. It would be sure to, but to say, hey, honey, I'm scared right now, or what you see where I'm going. How do you guys navigate that? I do see
we just and my company right now is experiencing its first downturn ever. We've always exponentially grew over these last couple of years since COVID, but I'll be honest with you, David, we haven't had that conversation yet. I know we're both scared.
Yeah.
I can see it in the stress that it creates in our relationship. There's sometimes when she's a workaholic and she's ADHD. So she can be working on 1,000 things at once and she wants to get them all done before she goes to bed.
Okay.
And I'm the disciplined guy. I'm like, hey, it's 10 o'clock. We got to wake up at 6. We need to go to bed. I need you to put it away. And then about 11 o'clock, she's finally coming to bed, right? So that can create a little bit of conflict because my approach to running a business is to try to be as balanced as possible. I wish I was as ambitious as an Elon Musk or any of these other great CEOs that you hear about that can do all these amazing things. But the truth of the matter is I'm honest with myself and I prefer the balance. I prefer a long working day today and then a shorter working day tomorrow to make up for that. I prefer having the time to spend time with my family and my kids. I make those compromises. I go on vacation. I still check my emails, but I make sure I do it in not a way that's going to conflict with the vacation.
Right.
So right now with her and I, she's amazingly agreed to change some of her roles to help in the business where the business needs to be helped.
Yeah.
But we haven't had the conversation. So it's going to be interesting when we watch this podcast. But, we are both nervous about it, but we're both optimistic.
Sure.
And that's the thing. You're going to run a business, boy. You better be an optimist and not a pessimist. And know that you will find a way to dig yourself out of whatever potential things happening. I mean, we've had so many things happen this year that are completely outside of our control. But you have to learn how to roll with those punches and go forward. And we're stronger doing that together.
You bet.
I don't have to worry about, I can't, I'm not going to talk to her about this. She don't want to hear about that. Right? Like we have to do the opposite. Hey, let's talk for 10 minutes without talking about the business.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, about how do you communicate
how do you navigate it?
As entrepreneurs, and how do you navigate as lovers and parents and all those things and friends?
Yeah, it's just tricky and it changes. And but the thing is that we have the conversation about the conversation.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, today, like Laura just recently started putting a lunch date on her calendar. We both work from home in the same house, and there's some days I don't see her. So she's like, on Fridays at 12 o'clock, we're going to sit down and we're going to have lunch together.
At home.
That's great. And, and we're going to talk about the kids and we're going to talk about life and we might talk a little bit about business. But we have the conversation about the conversation.
Yeah. As you're sharing, it comes to my mind that a lot of the listeners here, they're not entrepreneurs and they're not, together.
Of course.
But bridging those conversations that are tough or that you kind of slide, it's like I talk about the empty nest thing. And so women are affected differently than men by empty nest. What happens with a woman, she's really good at nurturing. That's what she does best for the most part. Not in every family, but, for the most part. And guys have spent all this time building a career, right? And now they're entering into this time of their life. Typically, when the empty nest comes, it combines with this shrinking sphere of influence, right? Because most men reach a pinnacle in their careers in their mid 50s. You know, not all. There's some like me. I'm in my 60s and I'm pushing on, right, and reinventing myself. But and that's our hope for everybody. But they've been networking, and because they don't have much further to go, they start to not network as much, right? They're not around their friends, their kids' friends' dads at events, and if they haven't nurtured that relationship, you find a guy who's got this kind of shrinking sphere of influence.
That's right, but that's also a little bit by design in our American retirement system, isn't it? Like,
it is.
You work your ass off. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, you are. You can say anything you want.
You work your ass off, and now you're gonna retire and just drink pina coladas and do nothing.
That's right, which is such a lie.
And it's such a horrible way to live.
It is.
I mean, it's a horrible way to live.
It is.
You know, I'm actively trying to sell my company. Once I sell my company, I'm not going to retire. I'm going to invest. I'm going to advise, right? You got to stay in the game.
Right.
It's so important to stay in the game. But I want to get back to your other subject. I honestly cannot speak to you on empty nest. It's not happened to me yet. But I can imagine that for a lot of men and a lot of the friends that I talk to who are men, and sometimes I do have good conversations with some of my close friends like this where it's open. What I've learned and understood is that they didn't spend a lot of time talking together when he was building the career and she was building the family. Right. And now a time has come where I'm spending a lot of time with you and I don't know what to say.
That's right.
Wow.
And that was the point of bringing this up, is when you're talking about my business, we haven't had the conversation that we're both scared and what's going to happen. You know, how about a man who's there and he goes to his wife, he hasn't built up a relation, you know, they kind of haven't had any real brave communication, and now he's kind of scared. He's wondering what the rest of his life looks like. He's starting to doubt himself, right?
Oh, sure. I can imagine.
And that takes a courageous, brave communication to go to his wife and bring her into that conversation. And again, I'm going to go to your, the way you position yourself with your wife is that you look together at the problem, right? Instead of being against each other or adversarial.
Not on the opposite sides, on the same sides, looking at it on the same side.
Right. So I can, to get a man who's in that spot in his life right now to be able to bring his wife in and say, let's look at the next 15 years together, because I'm scared of this. I don't know what to do.
Well, you mentioned masculinity as a thing. I don't know what the modern term of masculinity is anymore. And quite frankly, I don't give a shit.
Right.
I just think that men need to have open conversations and be okay with their feelings. Yeah. I don't think it's an unmasculine man who will cry at a movie, or all these things that we kind of associate traditionally with masculinity need to go on the wayside, because women are stepping up and becoming, and that's another thing. I treat my wife as an equal, and you can't work together with a partner and not have that mentality.
Right.
And that also comes with the brutal honesty. It's like, I'm not going to hold back with her.
Yeah.
She's my partner. So if I'm screwing up or she's screwing up, we're going to let each other know about it.
Right.
During COVID, my business was out of business for 6 months, and I got depressed, man. I was drinking a lot. I'm a healthy guy. I try to only drink once, twice a week, but this was 5-6 times a week. And my wife was like, she started her own business on the side. It was called Mucho.mom. And she did marketing for businesses. And the whole thing was, our sons are bilingual. They speak Spanish. So that when they say, I love you, instead of saying, yo te quiero mucho, they just say mucho. So it was mucho mom, I love you, mom. Mm-hmm. So she's doing that during COVID, and she's figuring out other things, and I'm just sitting there deteriorating.
Yeah.
And, one day she just came up to me and like a swift kick in the ass and said, all right, I've had enough. Get your ass up and do some shit. Get up and, start working on the business again. It's been enough time. Figure it out, but please, stop this.
Wow.
I've let you have enough of your depression. You're done.
Wow.
And that's exactly what I needed at that moment.
That's so great.
Right? And that's what I'm talking about, like equals and partnership, and not talking about masculinity. It was just like, yeah, she's right. I'm being a lazy son of a bitch. and there's so much I could be doing right now.
Yeah.
Look at her. She's creating another company. She's doing all, like, okay. And right then and there, and probably great timing because COVID was coming towards an end, we started making videos about how to do tastings the correct way. And our business, that last quarter of 2020 grew. Like we were profitable.
That's so great.
Out of 6 months out of business to a quarter of profitability right during that COVID season. So, and I attribute a lot that to her, and that one singular conversation of her just saying, "Listen, man, I've seen enough. It's time. It's time for you to move on."
That's so great. Her intentional, brave communication, confronting something that needed to be confronted, right? Bringing it to a conflict, and then calling you, not accusing you, but calling you out, calling you calling the gold out of you.
That's right. Calling me to intentionality.
Yeah.
Calling me to the higher purpose.
That's so great.
Like that's the beautiful thing. She's done that for me on some occasions, and I've done that for her on some occasions. And it's a really great thing. I hope anybody can experience this, whether you're a man with a woman or a man with a man or whatever. If you could just find a great partner to share these experiences with in life, it enriches your life a lot. But you have to be a person that's willing to compromise, and you have to be willing to say, I want what's best for that other person, even if it comes at my own expense. And if they're doing it the same way, you're going to win.
That's so good.
You're going to win. You're going to win together, and you're going to have a much more enriched life.
That is so good. That is so good. That's a good one to kind of end on. I'm so excited about that because, it really does come from looking at somebody through the proper lens and saying, I want the best for you.
That's what it should be. And you can only do that by being honest with yourself, and then also living a life that you want the best for yourself and for them, which means when life is kicking our asses, you got to get up every day and you got to figure out how to get through it and be a service to somebody else.
That's so good.
We watched this amazing clip the other day, Apple TV. I don't even have Apple TV. I had to find another way to get it, but it's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And it's just this cute little animated clip, 35 minutes long. And what got me was on a TikTok, the mole asked the boy, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the boy pauses and he says, kind. I was like, oh, this is something that I think I want to explore with my children.
Yeah, wow.
So we watched the show with my boys, and it ends where, and for a humanist like me, who doesn't really subscribe to a religion, the boy says, I think I know why we're all here. We're here to love and to be loved. And to me, if we can all have that attitude in our personal relationships and our business relationships, life will be great.
So good. So good. Man.
Sorry.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Y'all, Lamar, thank you. Man, I'm so excited and so blessed to have you here and to count you as a friend.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and talking about this great stuff. Thank you, David.
Well, thank you all for joining us again. As always, if you do me a favor, click like, subscribe, share, make comments. It all helps the algorithm so we can continue to bring great content, great guests, and touch on some of these subjects that need to be discussed and shared. See you next time.